You can't buy these in the USA. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to review an Edwards model. If you're not familiar with that brand, it's a subsect off of ESP. So most people are familiar with ESP's LTD, that's what we can buy here in the States. It's their slightly cheaper versions of the ESPs, but yet a lot of them are quite expensive. But over in Japan, they have additional subsects of things that they can only sell there. For example, you at least have Grassroots as well as the Edwards branding. So when you see a Grassroots, think kind of a lower end budget model Edwards. That's their more medium to high end range, kind of similar to Gibson's Epiphone. But being in Japan, they get to go by Japan court rules, which means they can use everyone's headstock from Fender to Gibson. So I suppose our main comparison today is, should you import an Edwards, or is it not worth the hassle? Should you just get the Epiphone made in China inspired by Gibson Custom Series? Something to keep in mind, these are about in the $1,000 range. But once you add shipping, import duties, taxes, forwarding agent fees if you need them, they quickly become about the same price as one of those Epiphones. So here we go. It's this interesting cherry color. We've got the P90 pickups. I think that's the biggest difference. Epiphone doesn't currently have a P90 loaded custom. But wow, those frets are impressively shiny straight out of the box. But it looks like we've got pearloid inlays on this one, so that's something that Epiphone might have over these. But then our headstock, yeah, sure enough, Gibson open book, but yet it says Edwards and they use their own logo. So for me, I don't really personally like Gibsons because they're trying to be something that they're not. But something like this feels a little bit different to me because at least they put their own branding on it and they are allowed to sell these in their own country. The first impressions out of the box, it's actually a really nice weight. I would argue the body is actually slimmer than a regular Les Paul though, but it has a really obnoxious, exaggerated dish carve to it, so that's kind of cool if you're looking for that whole 50s spec. But then check this out. It's actually using a real ABR1 style bridge with the post directly into the body. And it has what I would describe as a relatively skinny neck profile, so if you're after the 60s neck, I think you would like this. I mean, it's not complete blade thin, it's got a little bit of roundedness, but we'll talk about that more on the Workbench. But it's kind of got a slightly more exaggerated heel, so I think that makes the neck feel a little bit smaller. But this one is a poly finish, so it definitely has that feel to it, but it does look really cool, right? So this is a new updated model for, I believe, 2024. They come in ebony and wine red, and the spec sheet says it has a mahogany top, but they do advertise a 17-degree headstock pitch, so that might be a big deal for some people. But besides just the guitar, they do come with an ESP gig bag. Honestly, it's nothing special, just a little bit of foam. It does have a pretty sizable pouch though, but you'll definitely want to upgrade that to a hard shell case. So first impressions, do I think this is going to become a Gibson killer? No, but it does feel like a really high-end Epiphone that somebody's like souped up and had a really nice fret job done to it, but like one of the older Epiphones. But before we throw this one on the Workbench to learn more about it, if you're curious why I have this guitar, Cameron actually purchased this through my guitar forwarding service. He's a first grade music teacher and all of his guitars were not very traditional. Like he had the shredder neon colored ones and a few other ones that just didn't really fit the classroom vibe. He wanted something a little bit more traditional, so he came to me to see if importing one of these Edwards would be possible. He had, approximately a $1,500 budget here. And I told him, yes, we can do that, but you might consider like a 2010s Les Paul Tribute with the P90 pickups. Those things are fantastic. Or if you got a little bit more room in your budget, maybe a 50 standard P90. But at the end of the day, I said, if you want all the cosmetic appointments that the Edwards offers, the multi-ply binding, top, back, including on the neck with the Gibson style headstock, the Edwards is of choice, but it just gets a little bit expensive bringing it back to the United States. And he also could have thought about one of the new Epiphone inspired by Gibson Customs. But ultimately, he wanted the P90 pickups, he liked how traditional it was, he wanted to inspire the kids to want to play, and he wanted to see a video on his guitar. So thank you, Cameron, for entrusting me to get you your new guitar. I'm excited to check this one out on the Workbench now. Inside our Edwards E-LP-CTM, we've actually got some really interesting specs. So my first impressions were wrong. It is not a maple top. And the only reason why I said that is it seemed like a lot of these have like a little bit of flame figuring in certain areas where it dances. But sure enough, get it under the Workbench lights. That is 1000% mahogany wood grain. So the next thing I was curious about is it actually a top or is it just a whole body that's mahogany? But inside our cavity here, yeah, you can definitely see it's a mahogany top. But check this out, it's happy to see you. It does indeed have a long neck tenon. So that is true 250 spec, and it seems to be pretty well crafted. Like as far as the routes go, I don't see any crazy splinters or anything like that. But now our pickups. So the ones in this guitar do not have any markings at all on them, whereas the advertising sheets showed a nice little sticker, which I thought was a nice touch. But they're advertised as the Edwards Legacy P90 pickup. Now, if you're wondering what all this foam and stuff is about, it helps set the height adjustment of your pickup, because these secure using 2 screws right there. That's what those 2 holes you see in the body are. And hey, we do have a marking right here, CH for likely cherry. But this is cool to see. You actually have the braided shielded wiring. Our pickups within the circuit, the middle for fun is 3.84. Bridge pickup 7.75, and the neck 7.62. So fairly traditional in that aspect. But speaking of tradition, what's interesting about this one is it's based on like a 1954 Les Paul Custom. Now we do not have the Alnico 5 staple pickup, but they still use the Alnico 5 magnets in our P90s. I'm far from an expert at looking at a magnet and being able to tell you that. That's just off of a spec sheet. But I did pop a cover off here just to show you how it's done. So they took a little bit of artistic liberty there. But that's the reason you have the mahogany top on this model, because they're going after that. But your knobs and switch tip, I think, are a cheeky nod to Randy Rhoads, because witch hats are kind of that early mid-70s vibe, you know, around 74 like his guitar, and he definitely had a brass switch tip. But it's kind of cool. It's a little bit more durable than plastic in shipping. If you were curious about the top carve, here it is. This is the bridge pickup route where it dips in, but you can tell they definitely dish that out. It is not a flat top by any means. Just in case you don't know what I was talking about there, that is from here to there. But now we'll take it from here so you can see how it kind of has that big belly up lip. It looks like so. So that's nice. It gives it that really traditional Les Paul shape. But this bridge and tailpiece, interesting. So this ABR1 clone has a slightly thicker post than usual. It's really nice rounded over and domed at the top. That way it's not scratching you up. That's nice. But yeah, sure enough, no bushing in the body. Drilled directly into the top. They're going after that wire retainer ABR1 version, but I got a chuckle out of this. It says T ABR1. The tailpiece is full weight though, so not built to historic spec. But it's Goto, made in Japan parts. Our usual neck volume and tone, bridge volume and tone. And the pots have a rather hollow sound to them. Like they need a little bit of lubrication in them. I mean, they're not terrible by any means. I'm sure they're going to function just fine. That's just, you know, small nitpick stuff. I think this looks pretty sweet without a pick guard. But it does come stock with a 3-ply version, and it does have a protective plastic film over it. The back was surprisingly dirty. But look at the styling of the bracket here. That's different. But moving on from our mahogany body with a mahogany top, we've got a mahogany neck, we've got an ebony fretboard. So far, this is what impresses me most about this instrument, is the attention to detail on the fretboard. The body, it's good. It's your typical import style guitar with a poly finish. It's well crafted, but this is the big difference. Look at those fret ends. They're so nicely rolled and balled over. That's better than a lot of Gibson USA products straight out of the box. I'm not scared to say that. Those are not sharp at all. And they were really highly polished straight out of the box. That is not me. All I did was condition the fretboard. But that's the other thing. The board is so ridiculously smooth. They had to have finely sanded that. Not all manufacturers do that. And then look at our bone nut. It's so finely shaped. No sharp edges. Not that your hand really ever catches that. It's just, it looks so nice and rounded. Now, sadly, we do have acrylic inlays, and it's kind of that smaller block style rather than the full-on Les Paul custom ones. But, you know, it's what you usually find on an import. They're not terrible, but with Epiphone starting to use them, I've gotten used to the nice mother-of-pearl look. But we have a true 24 3/4 inch scale with your typical 12-inch fretboard radius. And then our nut width is 1.71 inches. And by the 12th, that increases to 2.07. And our first fret neck depth is 0.85 inches. And finally, by the 12th fret, we're rocking 0.94. So think C-shaped, but slim. That's the best way to put it. Here's a look at that neck profile, 1st fret and 12th fret. I know this makes it look huge, but it's not. But you can tell it doesn't have much shoulder to it. But now our beautiful headstock here. So it's all pearloid stuff. Edwards, they're kind of version of the custom emblem. But then check out our truss rod. It's a really nice squared off channel, so it makes it easy to get your truss rod tool in there. And even though it looks like a version that you put an Allen wrench in, it's not. It's Gibson in style with a truss rod wrench like that. They included that in the gig bag, and then I was shocked to see this elixir tag right there. And sure enough, I felt the strings. You know when there's elixir on a guitar, and those are expensive strings. I'm not sure if that was the dealer that sold this to me or if that's just how they come from the factory, though. Here's a look at our truss rod cover. Multi-ply, kind of a pointy tombstone shape. So I'd say everything's looking good up here. Moving on to the back here, let's look at the electronics. Ridiculously clean. Look at the solder work on that stuff. Very purpose-driven. There's not a lot extra, just the perfect amount to secure it. It looks really neat and tidy. That's some cool wiring. Otherwise, the rest of the cavity just has the shielding paint over it. We have a black plastic output jack plate, vintage-style strap buttons in our usual locations. And here's a quick gander at our toggle switch. Similar stuff going on. But the back plates for each of those also have shielding. Same is true over here. Then I do not personally see a seam line, so it very well might be a one-piece body, but I'm not 100% sure. The finish gets quite dark on the edges, so they would be able to hide a seam line if they wanted to. But I took the measurements. Everything seems to be about right. About 2 inches thick in this area with a 9, 13, 17. But I think I figured out why I thought it was smaller. Do you see what's happened here? They've covered over the binding with finish, which makes it look really tiny right here. And most people probably wouldn't notice this, but you see that red streak right there? That's actually the binding, just covered over in paint. They didn't scrape it enough. Prevalent along the entire edge. Some areas more extreme than others. I also noticed right here there's a little bit of a flat edge. Not overly noticeable in the grand scheme of things. Other thing to point out, you can easily see the seam line of the starting and ending binding spot. And I thought this was funny. They gave the illusion of thin binding in the cutaway. Moving up the neck, similar to the body. I don't see a scarf joint anywhere, but again, it is a dark finish. Kind of hard to tell, but I looked really good. It does appear to be a one-piece neck. Now, if you're curious about the headstock binding, it is similar to other import guitars, where it does meet the neck binding right there, so it's not Gibson in style in that aspect, but it looks good. And to stay correct to 50 specs, we don't have a volute or anything. And we've got our Goto tuners made in Japan, built to the Grover styling, with your keystone buttons. And our serial number of this one, ED944023. But all said and done, how much does this one weigh? 8 pounds, 2.3 ounces. That is not bad. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Very bright, articulate, and clear. I decided to raise that bridge pickup a bit though. Now let's mess with our tone controls a bit. have a nice gradual fade. A bit of a jump right there. But a bit more than just 3 positions like sometimes you get. Do that same test with the neck this time. Yeah, I'd say that's actually really good. So some things I'm noticing while I'm playing it, despite us measuring a 12-inch fretboard radius, it feels flatter than that for some reason. It'll take some getting used to. And my fingers are turning absolutely black on this thing. And that's after I clean the fretboard a little bit. Sometimes it's the strings that get that, but being elixirs, I wouldn't expect that. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. But now let's try some dirty tones. So similar story to the clean channel. The neck pickup doesn't really get that muddy, even with dirt. Now that we know all about this Edwards Les Paul, what are my final thoughts? It's a really nice weight. It has incredibly articulate single coil pickups that sound really good, clean, and dirty. It's got the looks. Honestly, if you're in Japan, you guys are spoiled with these. They are incredibly nice, all the way down to the fretwork. Now, the whole fingers turning black thing, that's not necessarily optimal. And yeah, was there a few minor details as far as scraping the binding that they could have done better? Yes, but that's strictly cosmetic. Everything about this I really like, except for that kind of flatter feelingness to the fretboard, but I think you would eventually get used to that. But as far as like the new Epiphones versus this for a USA buyer that has to keep in mind import duties, taxes, and all that, I think it just comes down to, do you want P90 pickups or do you want humbuckers? Because they do very different things. And do you want a brand that's associated with Gibson? But at the same time, that's kind of what the cool thing is for these. You might have to pay a premium to get them to the USA, but not everybody has an Edwards in their collection. This isn't something you can buy brand new in the States. So there's kind of a, aha, I have a guitar that you've never seen feature to this one. So I'm glad it's going to where it's going to, and who knows, maybe in 10, 15 years, one of his students will remember this guitar and they'll find this video of where he got it. So all right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed this Edwards Les Paul, did you know at one point in time Gibson had a brand called Orville that was also made in Japan? You might want to learn about that.